After you're done living off welfare, you poor thing." Those were the last words they said before leaving the house. I felt all the strength leave my body and just slumped down right there. I couldn't help but remember what John had said earlier. Sure, Sally Omar is independent, but I've always felt like my pride as a man was being hurt. From now on, I'm gonna build a family with Natalie. So, please, let's get a divorce. Everything seemed so trivial after that, and I signed the divorce papers to show my intention to divorce. Sometime later, I decided to discuss alimony with them, with a lawyer present. Shamelessly, an unrelated sister demanded a share of the property. However, the lawyer burst out laughing and said, "Isn't the welfare recipient you?" "What?" My sister was taken aback by the sudden turn of events and let out a ridiculously surprised sound. Right after that, seeing the documents the lawyer had placed on the table, my sister's face turned pale. "My name is Sally Omar. My husband, John, and I have been married for 18 years, and I'm 45 years old while John is 3 years my junior at 42. We have a daughter, Lisa, who is currently 17 years old and in her second year of high school. Next year is a crucial time for her as she has exams coming up. John and I met through work. I was working at a real estate company, and John was working at a related company. We hit it off over a small matter and started going out together in our private time. John has a very delicate personality and often struggles to make decisions. At the time, I found his indecisiveness adorable and was drawn to him. I wanted to take care of John. I genuinely felt that way. This was partly because I have a much younger brother. At first, I saw John as a brother figure and took care of him, but gradually, I was attracted to his more masculine aspects. And so, after a serious relationship, we got married. John was usually indecisive, but he was the one who confessed and proposed to me. He was able to make decisions when it really mattered. And that made me feel like I could marry him. We then had Lisa, and up until now, John and I have never had a serious argument or faced a crisis of divorce. Once Lisa becomes an adult, we're planning to enjoy our second life as a couple. I had always thought that way. "Hey there, Sally Omar. Mind if I crash at your place for a bit?" Until Natalie showed up unannounced, dragging a huge suitcase behind her and asking. You see, I have siblings in addition to a brother. The sister standing before me is one of them. We're quite far apart in age, which might be why I get along well with my brother. However, my relationship with Natalie, who is close in age to me, has always been rocky. Being shorter than her, I always ended up with her hand-me-downs. When our parents felt sorry for me and bought me a new toy, Natalie would snatch the new doll I got and give me her old, worn-out one instead, saying, "Ah, that's so cool. Give it to me too." Saying that my sister snatched the new doll she had bought me and forced me to use the worn-out doll she had used. Her overbearing behavior didn't stop there. Taking things was just the tip of the iceberg. Once we were in elementary school, she took all my friends away, and when I got my first boyfriend in high school, she seduced him away from me. I hated her so much that I went to a different college just to avoid her, but she still interfered in my life, ruining what should have been a fun college experience. I still dislike my sister to this day. I wish I didn't have to deal with her. That's why I studied hard, got my real estate license, moved to New York, and lived a life where I didn't have to see her face. Even my wedding was planned with John, deciding on a photo shoot just for the two of us. We kept it a secret since my parents knew what my sister was like. Yet, somehow she found out I was here. Just when I thought my daughter and I could finally have some time to ourselves with her going off to college soon. "Wow, Sally Omar, you're living in a nice place for yourself. Is this a house you bought? Oh, there's a spare room here. I'll be taking this room, thanks," Natalie said with her shrill voice, pulling me back to reality. "Hey, this is really inconvenient. You can't just show up unannounced and expect to stay here. My husband and daughter live here too." I protested, but Natalie started snooping around the house, ignoring me. Today was a day off, but my daughter was out attending a summer course. John had left early in the morning for work. Can you please leave before the two of them come back? I pleaded over and over, but Natalie wouldn't listen. Finally, as evening arrives, the two of them come home. Who might you be? Greeted with curiosity by John, Natalie, who was surprisingly charming for a 46-year-old, introduced herself with a smile. Nice to meet you, I'm Sally Ilmar's sister, Natalie. When did you two get married? I had no idea because there was no greeting or anything. I was just hanging out at our mom's place because I was bored and found your wedding photo by chance. It's a bit cold not to share such news, even among siblings. John was aware that I had a sister. Perhaps that's why he seemed slightly troubled, as if he recognized her from the stories he'd heard. But I didn't miss it. The sight of John, extending his admiration towards my beautiful sister, was unmistakably doting. Additionally, upon her return, Lisa showed a puzzled expression. And no wonder. An aunt she'd never met before had suddenly shown up at our house. However, Natalie aggressively pushed for a cohabitation arrangement. Actually, I got fired from my job, and it's been tough to manage rent and living expenses, so I was wondering if I could stay here for a bit. Well, if it's just for a short while, I guess it's okay. What? Now is not really a good time. Lisa has important exams coming up next year. I tried to bring this up, but the two of them ignored my words and got carried away with their excitement. Actually, I've heard about your sister from Sally. Oh, it's fine, it's fine. I guess Sally was avoiding me, so you were just going along with it, right? Sorry about our sister. This was the beginning of a tumultuous daily life. Natalie demanded money without doing any housework, and even went as far as to take cash from my wallet. This all happened within just 1 week of her moving in to live with us. I've warned Natalie about this behavior several times, but she wouldn't listen. Hey, if you need money, at least tell me what it's for or why you need it. Don't just take it from my wallet without asking. Huh? Why do I have to report to you what I'm buying? Because it's my money. If she's been fired, then she should be job hunting and planning to move out as soon as possible. However, it doesn't seem like she's looking for a job, and recently, it appears that the times when John and Natalie are out have overlapped. John claimed he was working overtime, but his salary never included overtime pay. I complained about this. You're not getting paid for overtime, right? Then, you need to get properly compensated for the overtime you've worked. If you can't say it, shall I say it for you? What? You think I'm lying? I get my overtime pay separately from my salary, so there's no issue at all. John, usually calm and never seen angry before, raised his voice loudly. This was shock enough for me. Because John was not someone who would get emotional or suddenly shout. From this point on, I started to feel a crisis in our current living situation. My sister continued to laze around at home, costing us a lot of money. In fact, I spent more on her than on my daughter, Lisa, which only made me sigh. I discussed this with our parents. They apologized for their lack of oversight, which led to my sister finding out about my marriage and our home. But it wasn't their fault. It was my sister who, despite my efforts to live quietly with my husband and daughter away from our parents, obsessed over me to the point of tracking down our home. She must have been preparing to find out where we lived the moment she found our wedding photos. She's surely plotting to take what's mine and make me miserable again. The story about her being fired is even starting to sound dubious. She might have quit her job on purpose, just to freeload off us and ruin my life. That's what I've started to believe. If that's the case, we need to kick her out of the house as soon as possible. Hey, you said you got fired, but if you were enrolled in unemployment insurance, shouldn't you be able to receive unemployment benefits? I've always been a part-timer. I wasn't enrolled in anything like that, so that's why I'm in trouble. I could have gone back to our parents, but I can't burden them in their old age, right? Then, as a sister who's independent, it's your responsibility to take care of me. That's common sense. I was speechless at her unreasonable demand. After dropping out of college, my sister had been working part-time and had never held a full-time job. Learning this fact later made me realize why her job hunting was doomed from the start. 3 months after my sister started freeloading, I caught her and John in the act of cheating. I had my suspicions, but to actually witness it. Canceling a client meeting left me with some free time, so I went to a cafe. Looking outside, I saw my sister and John walking together, holding hands and chatting happily. It's unthinkable for a brother-in-law and sister-in-law to hold hands like that. At that moment, I was certain they were having an affair. After some time, once my feelings had settled, I confronted them at home. "So, the overtime was a lie, huh? Sister, you've been pretending to job hunt while actually fooling around with John. How low can you get, trying to take something from me even at this age? That's why I never told you about my marriage." When I exploded with emotion and expressed my feelings in the heat of the moment, the two of them easily admitted to their affair. Then, they started saying things that were even more infuriating. "If I had known such a beautiful woman was your sister, I wouldn't have been swayed by Sally's sweet talk. Sure, Sally is independent, but I've always felt like my pride as a man was being hurt. From now on, I'm going to build a family with your sister, no, with Natalie. So, please divorce me." They confronted me with a divorce paper. Understood. With things like this, there's absolutely no way to rebuild. Sister, John. From now on, I won't be taking care of your finances at all, so just be aware. After I said this, my sister burst into laughter and said something outrageous. "Go get welfare, you poor thing." What? I wondered what she was talking about. As I was thinking, John, half smiling, started saying something even more appalling. "Ah, right. The mother always has the upper hand in custody battles, right? I think it's better for the daughter to be with her mother, Sally, than me. The rest is up to you." With those words, the two of them left the house. About 30 minutes later, Lisa came home and was puzzled by how quiet the house had become. So, I honestly told her that we were getting a divorce. Initially shocked, Lisa seemed to accept the situation with a bit of relief after a while. Sometime later, the divorce was finalized. I decided to demand alimony from the two of them, so I arranged a meeting with them in the presence of the lawyer I had hired. Shamelessly, my sister demanded a share of the assets. However, the lawyer burst into laughter and said, "Looks like welfare is for you, isn't it?" What? My sister, taken aback by the sudden turn of events, let out an absurd scream. Right after that, when my sister saw the documents the lawyer had placed on the table, she turned pale. "There's no money for asset division between this couple." At those words, my sister looked at me and John with a shocked face. Of course, John was also surprised, having been told there was hardly any money to their names. Anticipating this, I had done something right after witnessing John and my sister's affair. Therefore, the only cash we had between us was a mere $24,000. As a couple celebrating their 18th anniversary, it's a hard amount to believe. "Hey, what's going on here? You had a lot of savings, didn't you?" John, completely unable to grasp what was happening, asked in a panic. Upon seeing that figure, rage welled up inside me. "You really don't care about Lisa at all, do you? I talked to you about this. I was thinking of transferring the education savings I've accumulated over the years into Lisa's account. You said, do whatever you want, so I moved my savings to Lisa's account. Almost all of my savings were for education expenses. You know that better than anyone, right? Lisa manages her own money, and I even paid the gift tax to transfer it to her. This can no longer be considered joint savings." When I said that with a composed face, remembering the conversation, John's complexion turned noticeably worse. "Then, what's the breakdown of the $24,000? "I think about 80% of it is John's secret stash." Upon hearing that, John had a look of disbelief on his face. "Did you know about this and that's why you transferred your savings to Lisa, anticipating the property division?" "You agreed to it. Look, You even signed the consent form yourself." With that, John became furious. "I thought it was strange. Why would you ask for my consent just for that?" John said this while scratching his head, clearly regretting it, but he couldn't take back his signature now. I consulted a lawyer, who explained that since John had consented to the gift to Lisa, it was no longer considered marital savings at that point. I didn't want to give the money I had saved for Lisa to these two people. That's why I thought of making a lifetime gift. Upon hearing this, my sister, dumbfounded, somehow managed to say to John, "Hey, didn't you say we had plenty of savings? Weren't we supposed to live a luxurious life together? Dividing $24,000 in assets won't amount to much. Why didn't you realize Sally Omar's intentions sooner?" While turning pale and berating John, he just looked away and kept silent. John, having a low salary and burdened with a lot of student loans, had hardly contributed to the living expenses since our marriage. But that was agreed upon. When John said it was difficult to contribute to the living expenses, I said, "All right, I'll take care of all the living expenses. So, could you focus as much as possible on saving money for our retirement?" Thus, for over a decade since I took on all the living expenses. John was supposed to have saved at least $20,000, but when we checked, it was just under $20,000. Since he didn't have to pay for living expenses, I thought saving money would be easy, but John had been wastefully spending behind my back. That must be it. By chance, when I saw the bank account statement John had left on his desk and learned how much he had saved, I felt betrayed. But maybe he's been saving properly in another account. That faint hope was also betrayed, but now that I'm divorced from him, I don't care anymore. My sister is finally understanding the seriousness of the situation and is in despair. Her body is shaking slightly, and she seems to be trying hard to think about what to do next, but it seems like she couldn't come up with anything. I decided to tell my sister, who is confused to learn that the only cash available for division is just $24,000, another truth. I looked towards John and said, "I was debating whether to say this, but John, aren't you planning to quit your job?" Then, our eyes met sharply, after he had been silent and avoiding my gaze until now. John, visibly shaken, darted his eyes left and right and exclaimed, How do you know I'm gonna quit my job? I haven't told anyone but the boss yet." I thought so after seeing the statement. What I pointed out was the fact that no overtime pay was being made, but actually, I was wondering about something else. That was about the use of paid time off. John used to work for a real estate company and now works for a construction company, but I've never seen him take more than the minimum 5 days of paid leave. Yet, on the recent statements John brought home, there was a notation that paid leave was being used up all at once. Using up paid leave all at once brings to mind resignation. Since then, I suspected their affair and thought maybe, thinking he would get a large sum of money by divorcing me, he decided to quit his job. I couldn't believe it turned out to be true. I sighed at John's overly optimistic thinking. "Well, you are my husband after all, so you know what kind of job I've done and how much wealth I've built. To rely on that, cheat, and even choose to resign, you really haven't thought this through." At that, John's face turned red. The lawyer told my sister about welfare because, essentially, if both of them were unemployed, that's what it would come down to without work. But my sister panicked at this further truth, then seemed to realize something and exclaimed, "Wait! If you alone can prepare for Lisa's college tuition and cover living expenses, there must be something fishy. I got it, you're hiding assets, aren't you? That must be it. Come on, spit it out." Taking my sister's words, John seemed to have a realization. "Yeah, that's right. Natalie, actually. Sally owns a lot of real estate, so we have to divide that too. That was close, I almost got tricked. Real estate is a valuable asset, so we need to split it evenly. You've been acting all high and mighty, but you're using sneaky tactics too." Watching the two of them laughing heartily, I was dumbfounded. The lawyer couldn't hold back any longer and let out a chuckle. At that moment, the tension in the air thickened. The lawyer cleared his throat and began to explain the facts calmly. If you're going to talk about dividing assets, you should study up a bit more. John, as the ex-husband, you should know that Sally owns real estate as a company and generates profit from it. Corporations and individuals are separate entities. Sally's company is her separate property, and it cannot be divided as marital property, you know? Convinced by the expert's explanation. The two of them, their faces turning bright red, froze. And the lawyer continued. What can be divided are things like cars, houses, and cash savings. Furthermore, Sally can claim damages from you, John for $20,000, and Natalie for $6,000. As soon as this was said, their faces contorted.
Isn't that a bit high? Yeah. I mean, normally, you don't hear about $20,000 for something like this, right?
They hadn't anticipated this turn of events and started making excuses. However, I immediately countered. Oh, who decided that? The market rate is just a guideline. John took paid leave to secretly date my sister, and my sister, without even trying to find a job properly, was out enjoying herself on my dime. The lawyer objectively reviewed these facts and decided on this amount. What? Would you have preferred a higher amount? Hearing this, they hurriedly shook their heads. The discussion didn't conclude that day and was adjourned. But I felt a definite sense of progress. 2 weeks later, we arranged to meet again for further discussion. Then, surprisingly, my sister took a defiant stance. Give me the house and the car. It's like a compensatory division for damages, right? Then we'll give you the $24,000, and I'll pay the remaining $2,000. That should be fine, right? Her ludicrous suggestion nearly made me shout in anger. But I managed to control myself with reason and calmly assessed the situation. The house still had a mortgage, and I had maintained it at every opportunity. So, it would fetch a reasonable price if sold. The car, too, was bought new and was only 5 years old. Both would still hold value, yet if I agreed to my sister's demand, I would be the only one to lose. That was absolutely unacceptable. Sister, did you even do the math? If you consider the money from selling the house and car, you wouldn't be saying such things. Typically, it's not for the ones who cheated, like you and John, to make such demands. It's for me to say. How audacious can they be? I thought so too, but before I could continue, John, sitting next to my sister, interrupted and started saying this. You're at the company, owning assets worth $240 million, right? I don't care if you're some real estate mogul or what, but being so greedy even with all that wealth is just too much. I was momentarily taken aback, but their behavior was so absurd that I burst into laughter. Given the situation, my sudden laughter made them freeze. After laughing for a good while, I straightened my face and said, So, is that all you wanted to say? And why are you acting like the victims here? Greedy? I'm fine with being greedy. Rather than giving money to a man who cheats and abandons his daughter and a despicable sister who steals her brother-in-law, it's better for me to earn as much as I can for Lisa. They flinched. Just like the lawyer said at the meeting the other day, I wanted to tell them to study more if they want to use legal terms. I wonder what made them think they could say such things in the first place. I thought about slowly shattering their expectations. John, this house is in my name, right? Well, I know that, but we've been living together so far. So what? It's my separate property since I bought it with a loan before we got married, no matter how you look at it. The car was bought new, has had no accidents or violations, and this model sells for a good price. If you want to take it, you'll have to pay me half the appraisal value. That's the rule for property division. I own 2 cars. One is the new car currently being discussed. The other is a used compact car I bought, which probably won't fetch much. But, the lawyer said, the house and car are subject to property division. My sister believed it without thinking. But that's not what it means. Look, the lawyer just mentioned the main items subject to property division, not that they are applicable in our case. The only things we have to divide between us are the $24,000 in savings you've hoarded and my savings, plus the 2 cars, that's all. Of course, my sister knew nothing, and John, not thinking deeply, found themselves in a pinch again. They showed signs of thinking hard, but eventually became lost on what to do. John pleaded with me, lowering his head.
Please! Can you just give me enough money to start a new life smoothly, huh?
But it didn't seem like genuine remorse. It just looked like he was bowing his head for now to solve the problem at hand. I didn't need such a shallow apology. I hardened my heart and answered. Given the way things are, it doesn't seem like you'd want to pay for Lisa's child support either. There's just no room for compromise. Why should I have to worry about your living expenses? Realizing that further discussion wouldn't change my mind, they reluctantly signed the necessary documents. After the divorce and property settlement were finalized, my sister kept calling me persistently.
Hey, why did John have so much debt? You were paying for the living expenses, right? Then, what's the point of having debt? What's going on here?
My sister was freaking out on the other end of the phone. Holding back a sigh, I calmly explained the facts. It's pretty obvious when you think about it. Despite having years to save, he only had less than $20,000 saved up. Does having debt while saving suggest he made some big purchases or took out loans for them? I asked, dumbfounded. My sister, trying her best to make sense of the situation, shared more details.
Yes. He took out loans for tens of thousands just to buy nonsensical luxury items. And the credit card payments were set to revolve automatically. It turned into a huge mess. Turned out, this guy was just a disaster with debt. How could you saddle me with such a person?
More like you took him from me. I retorted with a half smile, leaving her speechless. It seems John had been racking up debt without even me knowing. Now, I'm receiving multiple collection notices related to his debts. While with me, he must have hidden it carefully, but probably let his guard down after changing his address. Or maybe, being overwhelmed with his new life, he forgot to hide them. Oh, there's one more thing I didn't tell you.
What now?
My sister was clearly frightened, but recalling the debt conversation reminded me of something. John claimed he switched careers to work in construction, but he was actually a sole proprietor. While income and residence taxes were deducted, he had to manage other payments himself. Being self-employed, I took care of my own Social Security and health insurance, and when John left his real estate job, I made sure Lisa was covered by health insurance too. I took care of my taxes, but it turns out John hadn't been paying his Social Security since he changed jobs a year ago. I was handling the health insurance payments, so that wasn't an issue. Due to some mistake, a Social Security demand notice was sent to our house. I contacted John for permission and opened it to find it was a demand notice. He had been hiding it all along, and I had no clue. I've been paying my own Social Security, and I just assumed John was doing the same. When I called John to ask if I could open the notice, he nearly cried, begging for help.
Social Security costs this much. No way, I can't pay this. We were a family, weren't we? Can't you do something, huh?
What? What are you talking about? The very person who abandoned his family, his wife and child, has the nerve to say that? My logic hit John hard, rendering him speechless once more. It seemed that, understanding there was no hope left in this conversation, my sister on the other end of the phone also fell silent in despair. So, you'll just have to figure it out yourselves, I said, and hung up the phone. Eventually, John also called, complaining about the high taxes on the car he took and how he hadn't anticipated the cost of the vehicle inspection.
Maintaining a car costs this much. I was shocked, you know. I thought taxes would be just tens of bucks, but they're in the hundreds. And the inspection costs so much too. Ha, it's tough, huh? Can't you take it back?
No, I said shortly, and John hung up, disappointed. Following that, I received emails begging for help, but after I warned. If you keep this up, I'll consult the police about stalking. The messages stopped completely. A hellish future awaited the two of them, worse than any hell. Later, I heard that John and Natalie got divorced. Their marriage lasted only 3 months after divorcing me. Maybe their plan was doomed from the start when they realized the house was in my name and not subject to property division. Marrying with tens of thousands in debt and compensation to pay was never going to work. Moreover, their divorce seemed to be even more contentious than mine had been. Natalie was obsessed with money.
Sell the new car. It's a waste to have it. Better to cash it in, right? What? I don't care about such petty cash. Besides, I paid Natalie's entire compensation, so if we're splitting, give me that money back.
Such petty squabbles kept them from divorcing smoothly. In the end, John apparently chose to declare bankruptcy. Since I had already collected the compensation in full, it didn't affect me. However, John ended up jobless and penniless, eventually becoming homeless. Of course, given his prior statement about quitting his job, he couldn't retract it and left the company. His useless pride prevented him from applying for social welfare. Now, he's probably living a miserable life, begging on the streets. Natalie faced divine retribution. Despite stealing her sister's husband and cheating, she was divorced in just 3 months, and word got out, ruining her social relationships. Of course, she was disowned by my family and relatives. Besides, no company would want to hire someone like my sister, so her job hunting is still struggling. Even if she manages to get hired for a part-time job, her attitude of being strong-willed and always blaming others while claiming she's not at fault gets her fired instantly. The reality has become what the lawyer said: welfare is your only option, and now my sister is at the government office, desperately trying to get welfare assistance. However, because she continues to hold on to items that could be sold for money, she's been unable to receive welfare, got evicted from her apartment, and ended up homeless, just like John. Since her selfish actions trampled not only on me but also on Lisa's feelings, this kind of punishment seems only natural. Now, it's just the two of us living together, but our days haven't changed much. Lisa feels refreshed without John around, who did nothing for her yet always complained, telling her to study and to get into a good university. And she did it. She got accepted into a national university. Seeing my daughter becoming a college student this fall fills me with emotion all over again. My job is busier in a good way, and though I'm almost 46, I'm still in good health. I feel motivated to work even harder.